Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thanks, Jim.
The Energy East pipeline was canceled by TransCanada. Of course, we've heard various reasons for it, the low price of oil, the opposition to the pipeline by the mayor of Montreal, the federal government, and its regulations. So, in your point of view, what really happened to Energy East?
Yeah, we've also had people say, hey, look, it's being canceled because the business conditions or the market for the product at this time has shifted, and that's why it's not viable. But in the few days since that decision was announced last week, we've seen, I think, a growing amount of evidence and perspective that this decision was driven by a change in government regulation that created investment uncertainty, that made it ultimately not possible for the investors behind this important piece of infrastructure to say, look, we can confidently go forward with this. We can go to our bankers and funders and tell them that we have the kind of certainty that you need to build a $15 billion project.
Prime Minister Trudeau has said this is not a time to play politics with this pipeline, nor is it a time to play regional favorites. After Saskatchewan's Premier Brad Wall said that this is a real blow to Western Canada and something that has his province super upset. Is Trudeau telling us the truth?
Well, he even took to Facebook over the weekend, which I think is a pretty exceptional thing for the Prime Minister to do on Thanksgiving weekend in Canada, to say what you've just said, Jim. And I think increasingly it's more difficult to understand that when you look at the mounting statements from the TransCanada company itself, from others who follow this sector very closely, and who are aware that there was a commitment in early days of the Trudeau government for those proponents who were entering the permitting system to be able to go through understanding that the rules that existed when they started would also exist at the finish line. And they could therefore have consistency and certainty and be able to, make a pitch to investors. Instead, though, what the federal government did was they changed the requirement, or the National Energy Board, that is a federal agency, was probably instructed to change the scope of their inquiry and look not only at emissions created by building the pipeline, but also at emissions from the upstream side, from where the product comes from, and also where it ultimately is used, which some have equated to making sure that, say, if you're an automotive manufacturer, that you're responsible for making sure the car, when it's eventually bought by somebody, is driven responsibly, which of course would be an absurd thing to say, but it's what the federal government is now asking the energy industry to do with its products.
Well, I'd say it'd be similar to paving a road and then the paving company be responsible for the carbon emissions of the vehicles that use that road. You don't know how many people are going to be on it.
That's right. And
I think what they're going to drive.
Well, exactly. If you applied this to, say, Bombardier, and here's a made in Canada aircraft or a Canadian aircraft made around the world with Canadian leadership, and you said anyone who buys one will be able to rest assured that the responsibility for how it's used, all of the hydrocarbons that are burned to let it go places during its 20 years of life, don't worry, that's the responsibility of Bombardier, who made the plane. That's the standard that is being set for pipelines in Canada, which again doesn't sound like it makes sense. But it's what we're seeing, and it's what so many commentators who are close to the situation have been talking about in the last few days. So this is where we stand at this stage.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, the mayor of Montreal was dead set against the Energy East pipeline that would have seen the fuel or the product refined in the Maritimes. Right now, the oil that goes into Montreal is supplied by the Middle East. Do you think maybe there was a little bit of collusion going on here? We don't have any proof, but the mayors of Montreal do have a history of taking bribes.
Well, that's an area that I have no information about it. You know, if the decision of Energy East has caused others to start wondering about that, I'm not surprised though, because it is such a strange thing when Montreal, which dumps millions of liters of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River, holds itself up as some sort of environmental champion, when the people of Quebec are now buying more trucks and SUVs instead of cars because the price of gasoline is low, are presenting themselves to the rest of Canada as somehow the province that is doing right by the environment and all the rest of you aren't. Well, that's kind of absurd. I think there is I would call it a Montreal mindset on this issue, and I encounter it yesterday at a conference I'm at. I talked to a professor from a university in Montreal who didn't want to believe that the resource industry in British Columbia remains in 2017 a very powerful driver of the economy. He just didn't want to hear about it. And, I think that's typical of what I've heard from a lot of Quebecers on this issue. And I hasten to add that I've also had conversations with lots of Quebecers who are very supportive of recognizing that we have to take a responsible approach to a diversified energy diet. So we have oil and gas. We know we need those, but we also encourage hydro and begin to incorporate other kinds of renewable energy sources into our energy mix.
Well, up until about a year and a half ago, natural gas was considered to be a clean energy source. What happened?
Well, I think there are certainly those who try to make a case that it's not clean energy, but I think it all comes down to relative to what? Clean relative to what? And when you look at the options for a country like China, they consume so much energy, and most of it is from coal. When you look at the electricity they create, it's from coal-fired electrical plants. So how do they replace that with something cleaner? The best option they have, although it's maybe imperfect, but it's available and affordable, is natural gas. And for BC, that comes back to LNG. And this very morning, I heard the new energy minister from the NDP government in British Columbia stand before 600 people in Winnipeg and state that LNG from British Columbia will be a positive, desirable export to China to help them reduce their carbon footprint. So there we have it from the Crown Authority of British Columbia, that LNG is real, desirable, and environmentally friendly. That's definitive in my mind.
Well, the last study I saw said BC had a 200-year proven supply of natural gas. Why does the mayor of Vancouver want to ban natural gas use in restaurants for cooking, which chefs love, and for heating homes and for fireplaces?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of people have tried to figure it out because is baffling to those in the restaurant industry. If you next time you're in a Chinese restaurant, well, we all know this. You know what the chef is cooking with. It's a wok, and there's intense heat, and there's flames, and it only comes from natural gas. And the city of Vancouver was saying for a time, don't worry, we're just going to let you have renewable natural gas. It's the same thing as natural gas, and it'll make no difference. Well, actually, it does make a difference because there's only 1% renewable gas available compared to other forms of natural gas that we get, say, from Northeast BC. So it was just a sleight of hand and an unsuccessful one. I think the city eventually did back down on making that. But, you know, I must say the city of Vancouver, like all cities, it usually has its heart in the right place. You know, they want to help citizens to lower their environmental footprint. Everyone wants that. I agree with that. But I think that when we overlook the basic stark fact that through energy efficiency, through improving the equipment we use, you know, better fireplaces, better furnaces, better stoves, we can use that precious natural gas substance more effectively, and we can also save ourselves money by doing that. You know, if you put in a new furnace in your basement, you can do way more than driving an electric car because you're replacing a 1960s piece of technology with a current day one, and you're all of a sudden at, you know, near perfect efficiency in terms of how much of the energy in that natural gas is being used. So isn't that a smart thing to do that anyone can do? You don't need to have a moonshot, you know, solution that no one's thought of yet to solve that problem with your heating bill. You can solve it today.
And I was thinking too, if we use natural gas to power our vehicles, it would be a lot cheaper than using gasoline, wouldn't it?
Well, you know, isn't it just it would be, Jim, but isn't it just almost a rule of thumb as you go through life that the things that are readily available, that are possible to do, that they're at hand, that are solutions to a problem you've got, are usually the ones that you reach for. You know, you don't have to, if you want to get a little bit fitter, become an Olympic champion. You just need to get out and walk every day. You know, and you can increase slowly over time how you get there. And I think the energy transition, which is a phrase we hear a lot of, is coming around to this idea whether to get better or get fitter, we do it by, you know, wanting to become an Olympic sprinter, all of us, or we all get out and walk a little bit, if I can use that metaphor. And I think the common sense one is the latter one. You know, we can all do things. We can upgrade our car to something that's got, you know, better systems in it. It might be an internal combustion engine. It might be a hybrid. Maybe you want an electric car. You know, we have the choices we can make as consumers to efficiently use our finite money. And people are pretty good at making choices of that kind, just like they're pretty good at making choices about how to heat their homes affordably. And, you know, wherever people in BC right now, because of the prices, wherever they can get natural gas in their homes, they do that because electric is going to be more expensive. And yet you hear, you know, the city might say, oh, just get a heat pump. It'll be so much cheaper. Well, I actually followed that advice a few years ago, and I would like to be able to say the heat pump saved me a lot of money. It actually cost me a lot of money because it runs on electricity. And then the electricity rates went up on me. So now to use that heat pump, it costs quite a lot of money. So I'm not as thrilled in 2017 about the heat pump as I was back in 2007 when I put it in. I'm sorry to say, and that's, you know, what every consumer goes through. I'm certainly not alone in that. I hear it all the time.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineered gold mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, something that you're kind of concerned about or interested in is the proposal for proportional representation in BC. And people may wonder, what does proportional representation have to do with the natural resource industry? Maybe you can explain that to us.
Well, proportional representation to me goes back a long time in my experience, because I was back in the news business, an editor at the Vancouver Sun when we went through not one but two referenda on proportional representation in British Columbia. Do you remember those days, Jim?
Absolutely.
Yes, you do. And, it was a yes or no answer. Do you want PR or not? Or, something to that effect. The question was more nuanced, but it was one or the other.
They made the
binary.
question so confusing, nobody knew what they were voting on, is what they actually did.
Well,
it wasn't clear.
There was that confusion, but I think there was, the distinction from Bill 6 that's come forward is that there was a binary quality to it. If it passed, this was the answer. If it didn't pass, that was the answer. And although, yes, there was confusion, in the sense you say, I think compared to Bill 6, where it looks like the bill was set up to drive towards the inevitable adoption of PR, that's a distinction from how it was last time. So I think this might be, as a resource issue, I think it's interesting because what we're already starting to hear from the rural parts of the province and concerns about whether under a new system like this, they would be as represented as they are now in decision making.
And why would they be concerned about representation?
Well, I think the distribution of seats in the Lower Mainland, right away it does give a very significant voice to the Lower Mainland, which in a democracy makes sense. There's a lot of people there, but there's also a lot of people spread all around the province, and that's where we're starting to see concern about whether proportional representation would allow their rural interests to be represented by parties that might be more urban in their focus.
Well, we often hear about that in civic politics. Vancouver, it's an at-large representation for city councilors. Other cities have wards, so your little local part of the city has a direct representative on city council. That's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. And I think, process is probably a big part of how anything like this becomes legitimized. And I remember in the 2000s when we covered this, there was a sort of a commission that was charged with carrying out this, creating the question and pursuing a fair process to ensure that there was understanding of what the question was and that it could be removed from the partisan arena and just handled as a freestanding piece of policy initiative that could be judged and take the politics out of it. So I think that will be one of the tasks if the government in Victoria wants to achieve that, where it's depoliticized to the extent that a decision of this type can be depoliticized, ensure that it does so. And the early commentators I've seen on Bill 6 seem to be suggesting that the outcome is already baked into the legislation. The consultation process that we saw in previous attempts is difficult to see where that comes into it. So if it's a matter of saying, here's the bill, let's ram her through, and that's what we're going to do, that's how we're going to become more democratic, I think that we'll see in rural areas, particularly ones that are resource intensive in their economies, that at the best of times feel that they are contributing more than they get back. I think areas like that we're going to start to hear more from.
Has there been talk in the BC Peace River region of joining Alberta?
I don't think that's a current topic. I think at different times in history, if you just look at a map and how the geography, the natural geography of the Peace River covers the two provinces, it unites those. I think people in Grand Prairie, Alberta have more in common with Dawson Creek, BC than people in Vancouver have in common with Dawson Creek, BC, and a lot of important ways, how they work and live and raise their families. It's really a shared space. It's already one region across the two provinces, but there still is that political line that runs north-south, dividing the provinces. I don't think that will change. I don't think that's on the agenda.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Jim.
By the way, where can people go if they want more information about the ResourceWorks Society?
Right. The website is at resourceworks.com. You can easily find us, ResourceWorks, on Facebook, and we're in Twitter as well.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. If you have any questions for us or our guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.